Did you know that there's an angel whose job is so intimate and personal that he knows the exact moment every human being will die? His name is Azrael, and he's known as the Angel of Death. But here's what will shock you. He has 70,000 wings, millions of eyes across his massive body, and he's present at every single death that has ever occurred or ever will occur. Unlike other angels who appear occasionally in human affairs, Azrael is constantly working. Right now, as you're watching this video, he's collecting souls from people around the world with a precision and gentleness that would surprise you. But what makes his job truly terrifying isn't the deaths he oversees. It's what he sees when he looks into human souls at the moment of their departure. Why did God create an angel specifically for death? What does Azrael see that makes his job the most difficult in all of creation? And what happens during those final moments when he appears to escort your soul from this life to the next? Stay with us, because what you're about to discover about this angel of ultimate transition will change how you think about death, life, and everything that comes after. This isn't just about ancient beliefs. It's about the reality you'll face when your own time comes. While most people will never encounter Michael in battle or Gabriel with a divine message, there's one angel that every human being will definitely meet. Azrael, the Angel of Death. Unlike other angels whose appearances are rare and special, Azrael's encounter with you is guaranteed, inevitable, and absolutely unavoidable. But before you let fear overwhelm you, you need to understand something crucial about Azrael. He's not the Grim Reaper of popular culture, wielding a scythe and bringing terror. According to ancient Islamic and Jewish traditions, Azrael is one of the most compassionate beings in all of creation, tasked with what might be the most difficult job imaginable. Azrael's name means whom God helps, or help of God, revealing that his role isn't about punishment or cruelty. It's about divine assistance during the most vulnerable moment of human existence. He doesn't cause death. He facilitates the transition from this life to whatever comes next. The descriptions of Azrael's appearance are both magnificent and overwhelming. Ancient texts describe him as having 70,000 wings, with each wing containing countless eyes that see every soul on earth simultaneously. His body is said to be so massive that it spans the distance between heaven and earth, yet he can also appear in perfectly human form when collecting a specific soul. This ability to be simultaneously cosmic and intimate reflects the dual nature of death itself. Death is both a universal experience that affects all of humanity and an intensely personal moment that each person faces alone. Azrael embodies both aspects, being present everywhere while giving individual attention to each soul. This ability to be simultaneously cosmic and intimate reflects the dual nature of death itself. Death is both a universal experience that affects all of humanity and an intensely personal moment that each person faces alone. Azrael embodies both aspects, being present everywhere while giving individual attention to each soul. What makes Azrael's job truly unique among all angelic beings is its temporary nature. Death wasn't part of God's original plan for humanity. It entered the world through sin and rebellion, creating a job that never should have been necessary. Azrael exists to manage the consequences of humanity's fall, making him both essential and, ultimately, temporary. This temporary nature might explain why Azrael's role is described with such melancholy in ancient texts. He performs his duty with perfect faithfulness, but he knows that his job represents something that went wrong with creation. Every soul he collects is evidence of the spiritual disease that infected humanity in the Garden of Eden. Yet despite the sadness inherent in his role, Azrael is described as approaching each death with infinite patience and compassion. He understands that, for most people, dying is frightening and disorienting. His presence is meant to provide comfort and guidance during a transition that would otherwise be traumatic beyond imagination. The fact that God assigned a specific angel to oversee death reveals something profound about divine character. Even in judgment, even in the consequences of rebellion, God provides help and comfort. Death may be the enemy, but it doesn't have to be faced alone. The most striking aspect of Azrael's description is his 70,000 wings, each covered with countless eyes that never stop watching humanity. This isn't just poetic imagery. It represents the impossible scope of his responsibility and the supernatural awareness required to fulfill his role. Think about what this means practically. Every second of every day, people are dying somewhere in the world. Car accidents, heart attacks, old age, illness, violence. Death comes in countless forms and never takes a break. Azrael must be aware of and present for every single one of these transitions, regardless of when, where, or how they occur. The eyes on his wings aren't just for observation, they're for recognition. Each eye represents Azrael's ability to see and know individual human souls. When your time comes, one of those millions of eyes will focus specifically on you, knowing your name, your life, your fears, and your hopes about what comes next. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. Azrael doesn't just see when people die, he sees when they're going to die. Ancient texts suggest that he can perceive the spiritual threads that connect each soul to life, and he knows exactly when those threads will be severed. This foreknowledge is both a blessing and a burden that would crush any lesser being. This supernatural awareness extends beyond just timing. Azrael sees the spiritual state of every soul he's assigned to collect. He knows who is prepared for death and who isn't, who faces the transition with peace and who approaches it with terror, who has made their peace with God and who is still carrying the weight of unresolved guilt and rebellion. The compassion required for this job is almost incomprehensible. Imagine seeing millions of souls every day, knowing their deepest fears about death, understanding their spiritual condition, and being responsible for helping them through the most frightening moment of their existence. The emotional weight of such a role would destroy any being not specifically created and empowered for it. Ancient Islamic traditions describe how Azrael's wings change appearance based on the spiritual state of the souls he's collecting. For the righteous, his wings appear beautiful, radiant, and comforting. For those who have rebelled against God, his wings appear terrible and overwhelming, reflecting not his cruelty but their own spiritual condition. This adaptive appearance serves the important purpose. It ensures that each person's encounter with death matches their spiritual preparation for it. Those who have lived in harmony with God experience Azrael's presence as comfort and relief. Those who have lived in rebellion experience his presence as judgment and terror. But perhaps most importantly, Azrael's countless eyes mean that no one dies alone or unnoticed. In a world where people often feel invisible and forgotten, especially during illness or old age, the angel of death ensures that every human being receives personal attention during their final moments. Your death will matter to someone, even if that someone is an angel. The wings also represent Azrael's speed and mobility. Death doesn't wait for convenient timing, and neither can he. He must be able to appear anywhere in the universe instantly, transitioning from cosmic oversight to intimate personal care in moments. His wings give him the supernatural ability to be wherever death calls him. The most terrifying aspect of Azrael's role isn't his power or appearance. It's what he sees when he looks into human souls during their final moments. According to ancient texts, the angel of death witnesses the full truth of every person's life, including thoughts, motivations, and spiritual choices that were hidden from everyone else. This supernatural insight means that when Azrael arrives to collect your soul, there's no possibility of deception, no hiding behind false personas, no last-minute pretending to be someone you're not. He sees you exactly as you are, your genuine faith or lack thereof, your real character beneath all the masks you've worn, your true relationship with God despite whatever you may have claimed publicly. But Azrael doesn't just see your current spiritual state, he sees the trajectory of your entire life. He witnesses how your choices shaped your character, how your responses to challenges revealed your true nature, and how your relationship with God developed or deteriorated over time. He sees the moments when you chose faith over fear, love over selfishness, truth over convenience. Perhaps most remarkably, Azrael sees the potential in every soul, not just what you became, but what you could have become. He witnesses the paths not taken, the opportunities for spiritual growth that were missed, the moments when different choices could have led to completely different outcomes. This cosmic perspective on human potential adds another layer of sadness to his already difficult role. Ancient traditions describe how Azrael's approach to each soul varies dramatically based on what he sees. For those who have lived in genuine faith and righteousness, his appearance brings immediate peace and relief. These souls recognize him not as an enemy but as a friend who has come to guide them home. Their transition is described as gentle, like falling into a peaceful sleep. For those who have lived in rebellion against God, Azrael's approach triggers immediate terror and regret. These souls suddenly see their lives with perfect clarity, understanding for the first time the full consequences of their choices. The angel of death doesn't need to pronounce judgment. The souls judge themselves when confronted with absolute truth. But the most heartbreaking cases, according to these traditions, are those who lived lives of spiritual mediocrity, neither fully committed to God nor completely rebellious, just spiritually lukewarm. These souls experience neither the peace of the righteous nor the clear condemnation of the wicked. Instead, they face uncertainty and regret about opportunities wasted and potential unfulfilled. Azrael also sees something that the dying person may not initially understand: where their soul is headed next. He knows whether the transition he's facilitating will lead to reward or punishment, eternal joy or eternal regret. This foreknowledge makes his job even more emotionally difficult, especially when he must collect souls that he knows are headed for judgment. The angel of death witnesses the final prayers, last words, and dying thoughts of every human being. He hears the desperate pleas for more time, the expressions of love for family members, the confessions of faith or admissions of doubt. He becomes the repository of humanity's final moments, a cosmic record of how people face their ultimate test. Perhaps most significantly, Azrael sees how death reveals the truth about what people really believed during their lives. Faced with the absolute reality of their mortality, all pretense falls away. Those who truly trusted God face death with surprising peace, while those who only claimed faith often reveal their lack of genuine spiritual foundation through their terror and desperation. Despite being called the angel of death, ancient traditions consistently describe Azrael as one of the most compassionate beings in creation. This seeming contradiction, a destroyer who shows mercy, reveals something profound about the nature of death and divine justice that most people never consider. Azrael's compassion isn't weakness or sentimentality. It's the practical result of understanding death from an eternal perspective. He knows that death isn't the end of existence but a transition, like moving from one room to another. This cosmic view allows him to approach his duties with a gentleness that would be impossible for someone who saw death as absolute termination. Ancient Islamic traditions describe how Azrael actually grieves for the souls he must collect, especially when they're unprepared for what comes next. He doesn't take pleasure in his role or approach it with cold indifference. Instead, he performs his duties with the sadness of someone who knows he's facilitating necessary but painful transitions. This grief is particularly intense when Azrael must collect the souls of children or young people whose lives are cut short. While he understands the divine wisdom behind every death, he also feels the weight of truncated potential and unfulfilled dreams. His compassion extends to the families left behind, though his primary responsibility is to the departing soul. The angel of death is also described as showing particular gentleness to those who are afraid of dying. Rather than appearing in his full, overwhelming form, he often manifests in ways that provide comfort rather than terror. For believers, he might appear as a figure of light and peace. For others, he might appear in more familiar, less threatening forms. Azrael's compassion extends to giving people time to prepare when possible. Ancient texts suggest that he sometimes provides subtle warnings or impressions about approaching death, allowing people opportunities for repentance, reconciliation, or final expressions of love to family members. These aren't delays of divine judgment but expressions of divine mercy operating through the angel of death. Perhaps most remarkably, Azrael is said to advocate for souls before God's throne. When he sees genuine repentance or faith in someone's final moments, he presents these discoveries as evidence of the soul's worthiness for mercy. He doesn't just collect souls mechanically. He serves as their final witness before divine judgment. The angel of death also shows compassion by making the transition as painless as possible for those who are spiritually prepared. While the circumstances of death may be difficult: illness, accident, violence, the actual moment of soul separation is described as peaceful for those who have lived in harmony with God's will. But Azrael's greatest act of compassion may be his willingness to carry the emotional burden of his role. Every death he oversees adds to his cosmic grief, Yet he continues faithfully performing his duties because he understands their necessity. He bears the pain so that the process of death can be as merciful as possible for those experiencing it. This compassionate approach reveals something crucial about divine character. Even in judgment, even in the consequences of human rebellion, God ensures that mercy operates through his servants. Death may be the enemy, but it doesn't have to be faced with cruelty or indifference. The temporary nature of Azrael's role also demonstrates divine compassion. God didn't create death as a permanent feature of reality. The angel of death exists to manage a problem that will eventually be solved completely when death itself is destroyed and humanity is restored to its original immortal condition. What makes Azrael's story both tragic and hopeful is the temporary nature of his role. Unlike other angels whose jobs are permanent features of creation, the angel of death exists to manage a problem that God intends to solve completely. According to biblical prophecy, there will come a time when death itself is destroyed, making Azrael's position unnecessary. This temporary status affects everything about how Azrael approaches his duties. He knows that every soul he collects brings creation one step closer to the day when his job will no longer exist. He's working toward his own unemployment, performing duties that serve God's ultimate plan to eliminate death entirely from human experience. The Bible's description of the new heaven and new earth includes the promise that there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. This isn't just good news for humanity. It's liberation for Azrael, who will finally be freed from the most difficult job in creation. But until that day arrives, Azrael continues his work with perfect faithfulness, knowing that each death he oversees serves God's larger purposes. The deaths of the righteous demonstrate the power of faith over humanity's greatest fear. The deaths of the wicked serve as warnings to others about the consequences of spiritual rebellion. Every death teaches lessons about the temporary nature of earthly life and the importance of eternal preparation. Ancient traditions suggest that Azrael looks forward to the day when his duties will end, not because he dislikes his job, but because he understands what its termination will represent. When death is finally defeated, it will mean that God's plan for creation has reached its culmination, and that all the suffering, pain, and separation he has witnessed will be permanently resolved. The angel of death also serves as a cosmic timekeeper, marking the progression of human history toward its intended conclusion. Each soul he collects represents another step in the journey from humanity's fall in Eden to its ultimate restoration in the new creation. His work has eschatological significance beyond just individual transitions. This prophetic dimension of Azrael's role means that he possesses unique insights into God's timeline for human history. He sees patterns in human spiritual development, understands the acceleration or deceleration of prophetic fulfillment, and recognizes signs that indicate approaching changes in divine strategy. Some traditions suggest that as the end times approach, Azrael's job will become increasingly intense as the pace of historical events accelerates. More frequent natural disasters, wars, and divine judgments will require him to collect souls in greater numbers and under more dramatic circumstances than during normal historical periods. But even during these intense periods, Azrael's compassion and faithfulness remain constant. He doesn't become callous or mechanical as his workload increases. Instead, he continues providing individual attention and care to each soul, ensuring that even in times of mass casualties, no one faces death alone or unnoticed. The end of Azrael's role will also represent the vindication of everyone who died in faith, trusting that death wasn't the end of their story. When death is finally defeated and resurrection becomes universal, all of Azrael's work will be revealed as temporary stewardship of souls that were always destined for eternal life. Perhaps most remarkably, when Azrael's job ends, he won't disappear or become irrelevant. Ancient texts suggest that his intimate knowledge of human souls and his experience with transition and transformation will give him unique qualifications for helping humanity adjust to immortal existence in the new creation. Since meeting Azrael is inevitable for every human being, the most practical question isn't whether you'll encounter him but how you can prepare for that meeting. Understanding his role and approach can transform your relationship with death from paralyzing fear into informed preparation. The first step in preparation is recognizing that Azrael isn't your enemy. He's performing a service that you'll eventually need. Approaching death with antagonism toward the angel of death is like being angry at a doctor who has to deliver difficult news. The messenger isn't responsible for the message, and fighting against Azrael's role only makes the transition more difficult. Ancient traditions emphasize that the quality of your encounter with Azrael will be determined primarily by your spiritual preparation during life, not by last-minute actions when death approaches. The souls who experience his presence as comforting and peaceful are those who have spent their lives developing genuine faith, practicing compassion, and maintaining their relationship with God. This means that preparing for death isn't something you do only when facing terminal illness or old age. It's a daily practice that affects every aspect of how you live. Every choice to forgive rather than hold grudges. Every decision to help others rather than focus solely on yourself. Every moment spent in genuine prayer or meditation contributes to your spiritual readiness for transition. But preparation isn't just about individual spiritual development. It also involves developing the right perspective on death itself. Understanding that death is transition rather than termination, that it's something that happens to your body rather than your essential self, and that it's a doorway rather than a wall can dramatically change how you approach the inevitable. Azrael's compassionate nature means that genuine last-minute repentance and faith can still affect your encounter with him, but relying on deathbed conversion is spiritually dangerous. The habits, thoughts, and character patterns you develop over a lifetime tend to dominate your responses during crisis situations, including the crisis of dying. The angel of death's ability to see through all pretense means that preparing for your encounter with him requires absolute honesty about your spiritual condition. Self-deception about your relationship with God, your character, or your readiness for eternity won't survive contact with his supernatural insight. One of the most important aspects of preparation is developing peace with the idea of divine judgment. Azrael sees everything about your life and character, and trying to hide from this reality creates anxiety that makes death more difficult. Accepting that you'll be fully known and judged according to truth, while trusting in divine mercy for your imperfections, creates a foundation for peaceful transition. Prayer and meditation practices that help you become comfortable with spiritual reality are particularly valuable preparation. If you've never learned to sense spiritual presence or communicate with divine beings during life, the sudden encounter with Azrael can be overwhelming. Regular spiritual practice creates familiarity with supernatural encounters. Perhaps most importantly, preparation involves living with awareness that your time is limited and your choices matter eternally. This doesn't mean living in constant fear of death, but rather maintaining perspective about what truly matters and making decisions based on eternal rather than just temporal considerations. The compassionate nature of Azrael's role means that those who approach death with faith, humility, and trust in divine mercy will find their encounter with him to be surprisingly peaceful. The angel of death wants your transition to be as smooth as possible. Your preparation determines how well you can cooperate with his efforts to help you. The story of Azrael, the angel of death with 70,000 wings and millions of eyes, reveals one of the most personal and inevitable truths in all of spiritual reality. Death is not just a biological event, but a spiritual transition overseen by divine compassion. Understanding his role transforms death from an unknown terror into a guided journey. Whether you find this prospect comforting or frightening depends entirely on your spiritual preparation and your relationship with the God who assigned Azrael his role. For those who have lived in genuine faith and righteousness, meeting the angel of death represents the moment when earthly struggles end and eternal rewards begin. But for everyone, regardless of their current spiritual condition, Azrael's story provides both warning and hope. Warning because his supernatural insight means that all pretense and self-deception will be stripped away at the moment of death. Hope because his compassionate nature ensures that even this ultimate transition will be handled with divine mercy and care. The temporary nature of Azrael's role also provides perspective on death itself. This enemy that seems so permanent and final is actually a temporary problem that God intends to solve completely. Every death Azrael oversees brings creation closer to the day when his services will no longer be needed. Your inevitable encounter with the angel of death can become either your greatest fear or your ultimate hope, depending on how you choose to prepare for it. The time for that preparation is now, while you still have the opportunity to develop genuine faith, practice compassion, and align your life with eternal rather than temporary values. If this revelation about the angel of death has opened your eyes to the reality of spiritual transition that awaits every human being, you need to see our next video immediately. Did you know there's an angel whose beauty is so overwhelming that it can destroy anyone who looks directly at him? His name is Jophiel, and he's known as the beauty of God. But here's the shocking twist. This angel of perfect beauty has been transformed into one of the most dangerous warriors in creation. He guards the entrance to the Garden of Eden with a flaming sword, ensuring that no human can return to paradise until God's plan for redemption is complete. Jophiel's story reveals the dark side of divine beauty, how something perfectly good can become terrifyingly powerful when wielded in judgment. The Bible mentions his flaming sword but doesn't explain why such a beautiful being was chosen for such a violent task, or what his presence at Eden's gates means for humanity's future. Click the video appearing on your screen right now to discover why God's most beautiful angel became his most fearsome guardian, and what Jophiel's mission reveals about the true cost of human rebellion. This isn't just about ancient history, it's about the barriers that still stand between humanity and paradise. Don't miss this crucial understanding about the angel whose beauty became a weapon and whose sword guards the path back to everything humanity lost. Click now and prepare to see divine beauty in its most powerful and dangerous form.